What's up, sports fans? This is the Lucas Ross Sports Channel. It is time to give you my way too early 2025 college football playoff predictions as we look way ahead to the 2025 college football season. Yesterday, I gave you my way too early top 25 poll for 2025. If you have not seen that video, be sure to go back and check it out right here on the channel. But now we're doing my way too early playoff predictions. I didn't really kind of do this video from last year. Last year I kind of, just picked, top contenders and dark horses in the playoff. But now throughout the college football seasons, year by year, I will start to do way too early predictions. Again, it is way too early to kind of be doing these videos. We still don't know what the rosters are going to look like, and we also don't know the NFL draft decisions. The transfer portal has been crazy. We talked about that, of course, yesterday in my top 25 video. So this is kind of be based off of that. From yesterday's way too early top 25 video, I'm kind of, just going to base it off of that, and then also just give you my early preseason expectations for all these 12 teams in the playoff field. So let's go ahead and jump right into it. Here is the bracket for the 12-team playoff. We'll have the second edition of the 12-team playoff era. It was a really good first year of the 12-team playoff era. We didn't really see a lot of upsets. We didn't really see a lot of close games except for maybe like one game in the quarterfinals. That was Texas and Arizona State. Then in the playoff semifinals, we did have a close game between Penn State and Notre Dame. And then Ohio State and Texas was kind of different. And then the national championship, it was kind of dominated by Ohio State a couple of nights ago. So I kind of hope we see more like next year. I kind of hope we see like more playoff games that are really more competitive. But let's go ahead and get started. And we'll start, of course, with the top 4 conference champions, and then we'll work our way down to the 12 seed. So we'll start with my top 4 conference champions. So at number 1, I have the Texas Longhorns. So I got Texas here as my number 1 seed. I think Texas might be the favorite right now in the SEC just based off of the hype that they're getting. Quinn Ewers, of course, going to be gone at quarterback, but the hype with Arch Manning coming over in the quarterback spot, that's really definitely given Texas a big advantage there. Plus, they bring in a really good recruiting class. I do like this Texas team a lot. Again, I think they were a little bit maybe overrated last year in some big games. We saw that with Texas in a couple of big games, maybe 3 games, I should say. Clemson and Arizona State, Clemson definitely was kind of an easy one, but the quarterfinals game against Arizona State, that was a little bit of a tough one. And it just seemed like when Texas got into big games last year, they just really couldn't win them. So, yeah, Texas here at number 1 just because of the hype they're getting with Arch Manning. I think they're probably the favorite right now in the SEC just as of right now. And I'll talk about who they'll play in the SEC championship here in just a moment. My number 2 seed coming out of the Big Ten is going to be Penn State. Penn State was my number 2 team in my way too early top 25 from yesterday. Penn State has a lot of production coming back. I think a lot of people are kind of sleeping on this team. Drew Rattler, you kind of expect him to step up this year. This offense looks like it could be a little bit better with the additions that they're adding in the transfer portal at wide receiver. And I just think with all the production they have coming back, Penn State might be the early favorite right now. I know you got Ohio State and Oregon in that conversation. And look, this is way too early. It's not going to be my official. This is like a prediction, but it's not really my actual prediction. My actual predictions don't really start until the summer. So, yeah, I'm not really basing this off of, off-season predictions, so far as we go into, the winter time. I'm basing this off of how the teams finished from last year. So, Penn State at number 2 as of right now, just because of the returning production with all those great players coming back on offense, I have to put them at number 2, and they were also ranked number 2 for me in my my number 2 in my way too early top 25 from yesterday. Let's now move on to number 3. Number 3 is Clemson. I got them winning the ACC championship right now. Clemson, I think, might be the most talented team in the ACC. There are other ACC teams out there that could catch up to them, like, for example, Miami and SMU. Both of those teams are pretty good last year in the ACC, but Clemson definitely, with Cade Klubnik coming back at quarterback and just some additions in the transfer portal, and based off of how they won the ACC title game from last year, I have to put Clemson here at number 3. Then we go to number 4. That is BYU coming out of the Big 12. BYU finished pretty strong last year. I think this team was definitely underrated in my opinion. BYU probably could have been that Big 12 team that could have made it to the college football playoff, but they didn't make the Big 12 championship. You look at this team coming up this year, a decent amount of production coming back. They do return their starting quarterback. A lot of people are putting BYU in the top 10, maybe even inside the top 15. I do have them at number 9 in my way too early top 25 rankings from yesterday. I think there's a lot of hype around this BYU team because they were so young last year. This year they have that veteran kind of instinct, and they probably could have a pretty tremendous season coming up in 2025. So those are my top 4 Power 4 conference champions. Now let's go to the at-large teams from 5 through 12. We'll start with my number 5 seed. That's going to be the Ohio State Buckeyes, the defending national champions. I got Ohio State ranked number 3 in my way too early top 25 from yesterday. Penn State just ahead of them. I feel like it could be Penn State versus Ohio State in the college or the Big Ten championship, I should say. Let's say Ohio State beats Penn State in that first matchup, and then the second rematch, they probably, maybe Penn State probably beats Ohio State, and they put them right there as the number 2 seed as the Big Ten champion. I think that's how it's going to work for the committee. I think that's how it's going to work here, just based off of the seeding and also just based off of that Big Ten championship. So I got Penn State beating Ohio State in the rematch. Again, this is way too early. It's not my official prediction. These are just simply based off of how the teams finished from last year. Let's now move on to number 6. Number 6 is the Georgia Bulldogs. I think it's going to be Texas and Georgia as of right now in the SEC Championship. It could be possibly once again this year for the second year in a row. These two teams played each other twice last year, and Georgia beat Texas in both of those matchups. This year, Texas has to play Georgia in Athens. Let's say that, Texas loses that first matchup. Same thing like, Penn State and Ohio State. Texas loses the first game and then they win the second game. That's probably going to allow Texas to finish 11-1, and they could probably grab that number 1 seed from Georgia. So I think Georgia finishes there at the number 6 spot, and I think Ohio State might have a better resume than Georgia at the end of the day, just based off of that conference championship performance. Moving on to number 7, that's going to be Oregon, the third Big Ten team here in this college football playoff predictions. Oregon, I think, will be pretty good this year. You got Dante Moore coming over at quarterback. It'll definitely be a step-back year for them. I think the Big Ten is going to be so competitive next year. You got 4 teams that could battle that, first place spot. You got Ohio State, Oregon, Penn State, and Indiana. Indiana was pretty good last year, but are they really good enough to handle against these top teams? I mean, we didn't really see that last year because Indiana kind of struggled against Ohio State. So we'll see how they do this year with those 3 top contenders. But yeah, these 3 teams right here, Ohio State, Penn State, and Oregon, are pretty much your top contenders in the Big Ten heading for next year's playoff. Moving on to number 8, that's Notre Dame. Notre Dame is an independent team, but I think they'll definitely make it in there as an at-large team. Notre Dame might not be the same team from last year, but I think they'll definitely be ready for the college football playoff. They can either get in there as an undefeated independent team and also either way an at-large team, and then also 11-1 or 10-2 possibly could get them in the college football playoff as well. Moving on to number 9, that's LSU. I know a lot of people are going to explain about this one. LSU is a team that has a lot of hype coming up this year. I did have them ranked number 8 in my way too early top 25 rankings from yesterday. It's because of the additions in the transfer portal, and also they do have Garrett Nussmeier coming back at quarterback. I also like the way their schedule sets up. I feel like they have a pretty good shot to be that 3rd best team in the SEC, because if you look at my way too early top 25 from yesterday, I had LSU ahead of Alabama because Alabama is going to lose Jalen Milroe and plenty of talent on both sides of the football. They'll still reload, but I just feel like based off of the returning production, LSU definitely looks like they have more returning production and also a little bit more talent than Alabama just based off of that. So I think LSU probably gets in here as an at-large team. They could probably finish maybe 11-1 or 10-2. Even though they don't make it to the SEC championship, they could still make it in there as an at-large team. So that's the 3rd SEC team in there. I feel like the Big Ten and SEC are 2 conferences that are just going to take over the playoff for next year. Let's now move on to number 10. Number 10 is Iowa State. So I got the Big 12 runner-up against BYU. As of right now, I think it's going to be BYU and Iowa State in the Big 12 championship. Based off of my rankings from yesterday, both of these teams were the top 2 teams in those rankings. Iowa State has a lot of production coming back, so I feel like both of these teams will be pretty good. I feel like BYU and Iowa State are both really underrated heading into next year, so that is what I think is going to happen. I don't think you can penalize a team for losing a conference championship. Let's say Iowa State just loses by 3 points. That'll probably be enough to put them in the 12-team playoff. And then same thing here for the 11 seed. That 11 seed is SMU. Let's say SMU loses to Clemson by 3. They will get in the college football playoff. But what if they lose by more than like 2 touchdowns? That probably gives Alabama a chance to make the playoff, and then also South Carolina is probably on the bubble. You know, I had South Carolina in the top 10 from yesterday, but I just feel like the committee, as of right now, is not going to penalize these 2 teams for losing a conference championship. But I think the Big 12 and ACC are going to be really tough, you know, to get 2 teams in there. You know, it was kind of like the same thing from last year. You had a couple of ACC teams making it in, but you had, you know, just one Big 12 team. The Big 12 was so wide open that you could not really put 2 teams in there. But the ACC, it was really down to like 2 top teams in there, so they really kind of, you know, just had enough to put 2 ACC teams in there, and I think that probably goes for the same here between these 2 teams. Let's say that Iowa State and SMU just lose maybe 1 game in the regular season, and then they get to the Big 12 championship. That'll give them 2 losses. They really should not be penalized for losing a Big 12 championship and then also an ACC champion. So this was kind of tough here, you know, for Iowa State and SMU. I thought about putting Alabama and South Carolina in here, but I decided to go with the runner-ups in both the conference championships. Again, it's way too early for a reason to be doing these kind of videos. And then we go to my 12 seed. That's the Group of 5 champion. I'm just going to go with a gut here and, you know, just base it off of a team that finished pretty well last year, and that's going to be UNLV. So UNLV is a team that was runner-up in the Mountain West, but Boise State, you know, due to them, you know, losing to Ashton Genty, and then also losing plenty of talent from last year's team, and also Dan Mullen coming back from coaching after being in the studio, I think UNLV actually might be a pretty good Group of 5 team. So look out for this UNLV team from next year, even though they're a Group of 5 team. I mean, they could be eliminated in the first round, but either way, I think UNLV might be that top Group of 5 team as of right now. So as my conference champions, I got Texas as the number 1 seed, Penn State at number 2, Clemson at number 3, BYU at number 4, and then my at-large teams, Ohio State at number 5, Georgia at 6. I also got Oregon at number 7, Notre Dame at 8, LSU at 9, and then also Iowa State and SMU, the runner-ups in both the Big 12 and the ACC championship. I also forgot to mention Ohio State would be that runner-up in the Big 10, and then also that runner-up for Georgia in the SEC, and then I got UNLV as my Group of 5 champion. So these are my way too early 2025 college football playoff predictions. Let me guys know what you think about my way too early predictions. Do you agree or disagree? Let me know down in the comments below. Again, I don't really feel confident with these predictions. Again, it's way too early. We'll kind of, you know, get more into it as we get into the spring, and then my actual predictions will be coming up in the summertime. So let me guys know what you think. Let me know down in the comments below. Thanks for watching this video, and stay tuned for more sports content videos on my Lucas Ross Sports YouTube channel.